There was something inexplicable in the air, an atmosphere thick with mystery and premonitions. It was the late 1950s, a time when the world was still rebuilding after the wars, and societies lived under unspoken tensions caught between tradition and modernity. Amid this landscape of silent transformations, atop Mount Gargano, the monastery of San Giovanni Rotondo stood as a refuge of quietude and spirituality. There, between stone walls and the scent of burning candles, Padre Pio received pilgrims, letters and prayer requests as he always had. Outwardly, nothing distinguished him from any other priest. His habits were simple, his routine meticulous, and his demeanor humble. He was not yet the globally revered figure history would later enshrine, but his fame was beginning to spread, slowly, like a whisper passed from one faithful soul to another. Yet those who approached him with attentiveness noticed something extraordinary in his eyes, a gaze that seemed to pierce through the surface of things, as if seeing dimensions invisible to others. There was a depth there, a stillness that was not mere serenity, but almost a presence from another world. It was in this context that Mr. Alberto Galletti, a man of unshakable faith and a devoted spiritual son of Padre Pio, arrived in San Giovanni Rotondo. His journey had begun in Rome, where the streets buzzed with the eternal city's restless energy. But his heart was fixed on the mission he carried. He was no ordinary visitor. He bore a special request, a plea from an archbishop, a message that transcended mere religious formality. There was a weight to this appeal, something that could only be entrusted to a man like Padre Pio, whose connection to the divine many had already begun to suspect. At first, the intention seemed ordinary, like so many others that reached Padre Pio's hands. An archbishop was asking for prayers for himself, a routine matter after all, since even men of the church sought the spiritual comfort of the stigmatized friar's intercession. But the response Mr. Alberto Galletti received was not what he expected. Padre Pio did not raise his hands in solemn prayer, nor did he offer words of consolation or lengthy blessings. Instead, he fell silent for a moment, lowered his eyes as if listening to a distant voice, and then whispered something so softly that only Galletti could hear. "Tell him, the one who will be Pope, to begin preparing." The words struck like lightning. On a clear day. Who was this him? The Archbishop. But why would he be Pope when a new pontiff had just been elected? Galletti's mind flooded with questions. The message seemed disjointed, almost like a riddle spoken before its time. "Bewildered?" he protested. "Padre Pio, but it's been so little time since we had a new pope. How can there already be another conclave?" The friar, however, remained impassive, as if he could already see beyond the veil of time. Without changing his tone, he repeated, "Did you understand what you must tell him? Deliver these exact words because he needs to prepare." Then, with a calmness that only deepened the mystery, he added, "He will be pope." There was no sign that the reigning pontiff was near death, no rumor of illness or crisis in the church. On the contrary, everything seemed stable. 4 years was far too short a span for another conclave, and yet that was precisely the time frame Padre Pio's vision seemed to indicate. When Galletti relayed the message to the Archbishop, the latter received it with a mix of reverence and disbelief. He trusted in Padre Pio's holiness, but the prophecy sounded implausible. How could he, a mere archbishop, ascend to the throne of Peter in so little time? Still, the friar's word was not something to be dismissed lightly. 4 years passed. Then, on Pentecost, the unexpected happened. The Pope died. Rome erupted into commotion. The throne of Peter was vacant once more, and the bells of the eternal city tolled in solemn mourning. Cardinals from across the world began arriving, clad in red, their faces marked by the weight of the decision they would soon make. The Sistine Chapel prepared to close itself off from the outside world, while within its walls, the sacred ritual of the papal election would unfold. It was a historic scene, repeated across the centuries, one that, strikingly, echoed in the present day. Padre Pio's prophecy, so enigmatic in the past, now revealed itself with supernatural precision. The Archbishop, the same man who had received the message with skepticism, found himself facing a possibility that had once seemed impossible. And Amid the whirlwind of events, one question hung in the air. Who would be chosen? Time, as always, would bring the answer. But Padre Pio, in his silent wisdom, seemed to have known it long before anyone else. Within the majestic walls of the Vatican, a solemn silence mingled with hushed whispers echoing through the marble corridors. The white smoke had not yet risen from the Sistine Chapel's chimney, and the world, Catholics and non-Catholics alike, waited with bated breath for the name that would define the Church's path forward. The tension was palpable, an almost unbearable suspense that would stretch on for days as the cardinals, in seclusion, deliberated under the watchful gaze of the Holy Spirit. Amid this atmosphere thick with mystery, a young priest, Father Eusebio de Castelpetroso, Padre Pio's close assistant, could not resist his curiosity. After all, who better than the stigmatized saint to know what was unfolding beyond the conclave's walls? Padre Pio had just left the refectory, walking with his usual slow, contemplative pace, when Father Eusebio, on impulse, approached him and, lowering his voice as if fearing unseen listeners, asked, "Padre Pio, who will be the next pope?" He knew nothing of the prophecy made years earlier, but he sensed that if anyone had an answer, it would be this friar whose eyes seemed to see beyond time. Padre Pio barely lifted his gaze. His expression remained serene, almost indifferent, but when he spoke, his words cut through the air like a blade of ice. "But will it be Montini? Will it be Montini?" The name of Cardinal Giovanni Battista Montini left his lips with a casualness that bordered on nonchalance, as if it were already a foregone conclusion. For an instant, however, he seemed to realize he had revealed something meant to remain hidden. With a faint disturbance in his usual composure, he murmured, almost to himself. It slipped out. Then he continued on his way, leaving Father Eusebio frozen by the magnitude of what he had just heard. Yet the most astonishing thing was that this was not the first time Padre Pio had named Montini as the future pope. 4 years earlier, in Tuaid Cetis Secret, he had made the same revelation to Mr. Alberto Galletti, an anticipation so precise it could only have come from supernatural knowledge. Now, at the very moment the Church's destiny was being sealed behind the Sistine Chapel's doors, the prophecy was fulfilling itself before the disbelieving eyes of the world, and so it was. Giovanni Battista Montini, the Cardinal of Milan, was elected Supreme Pontiff, taking the name Paul VI. The accuracy of Padre Pio's vision left no room for doubt. This was more than mere foresight. It was a divine sign, a confirmation that saints in their communion with the eternal sometimes step into the present with one foot in the future. And as the white smoke finally rose into Rome's sky, announcing Habemus Papam to the world, one truth became clear. There are mysteries that transcend human reason, and there are men through whom heaven speaks, even when the world's ears are not yet ready to hear. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your like and subscribe to the Living Hope channel on YouTube. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell to receive other publications.